One could say that with Ronald Reagan's passing, not calendar-wise, but in essence, the 20th century ended for the United States. And these days it became clear that in the last century, the country had two great presidents, Franklin Roosevelt, who overcame the terrible economic crisis of the late 20s and early 30s and, in fact, made the United States one of the superpowers at the end of World War II, and Ronald Reagan, who led the United States out of the apathy and depression of the late 60s and 70s and defeated world communism in the Cold War. Ronald Wilson Reagan was born on the 6th of February 1911 in Tampico, Illinois. His father was a shoe salesman and a chronic alcoholic. There is a legend that upon first seeing his newborn son, Reagan Sr. said, "He looks like a complete moron. But who knows, maybe he'll be president someday." His childhood was spent in the small towns of Illinois, where the descendants of the heroic pioneers of the Wild West lived. There, the classic tenets of classic American life, self-reliance, individualism, and a great deal of skepticism about government, were preserved almost in their original form. The Reagan family, already not rich, finally went bankrupt during the Great Depression. However, Ronald managed to finish college in 1932 in the town of Zurich and receive a Bachelor of Arts degree. His career began as a sports commentator at a small radio station in Davenport and then at NBC Radio in Des Moines, Iowa. The story goes that one day during a crucial baseball game, the telegraph connection broke down and Reagan spoke from the radio studio for 6 minutes to listeners about the game as if he were in the stadium himself. No one noticed the technical problems. With such artistry was a straight path to Hollywood. In 1937, the future president arrives at the Dream Factory. The first contract with him signed by the studio Warner Brothers. The role, sports commentator. And followed almost 30 years of film and television career. Reagan starred in 54 films: Girls on Trial, Love in the Air, Can to Rockney, A Typical American, Royal Row and much more. It was in the vast majority of paintings category B, that is, low budget, initially not pretending to high quality, in which the imposing son of an alcoholic plays mostly cowboys. Then cartoonists portrayed the president exclusively in this image. Reagan's character is always positive, the only exception being his role in the 60s TV film Killers. It is said that Reagan later regretted having agreed to take part in this film. During World War II, Reagan was not drafted into the army because of myopia. He worked at an Air Force film studio making training and propaganda films. His first decade under Hollywood was also marked by his marriage to actress Jane Wyman. 2 children were born of this marriage. But in parallel with a not very successful artistic career is Reagan's advancement in the public line. In the Union of Film Actors, he joins in 1938, in 1941 he became a member of its board, and in 1947 he is already president of the American Guild of Film Actors. During the witch hunt era, Reagan had the opportunity to work with Senator McCarthy's famous commission to investigate anti-American activities. He spoke at a meeting of the notorious commission. True, he refused to publicly announce the list of colleagues suspected of communist sympathies. However, the FBI archives have been preserved. The file, in addition to data about Reagan himself, height 6 feet 1 inch, weight 175 pounds, blue eyes, brown hair, contains other information. The fact that the staff informant of the FBI was Ronald's brother Neil, who reported to intelligence agencies all the latest news about the activities of the film union. Even recently a liberal, a member of the Democratic Party, Reagan said, "The communist plan for Hollywood was remarkably simple. It consisted of taking over the film business in order to create a colossal worldwide propaganda base." The 50s were a turning point in Ronald Reagan's life. In his personal life, divorce from his first wife and a new marriage to actress Nancy Davis, with whom he would live for 52 years until his death. In career, drift from Democrats to Republicans, ardent conservatives, first attempts at political activity. Apparently, during this period, Reagan realized that in film, television and theater, he is not destined to show his acting talent to the fullest extent. And he went into politics, not without a sense of marriage of shame. He, of course, did not know and did not even assume that he was destined not just a major role in some blockbuster, but a role in history. The transition from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party did not happen suddenly. In the early 60s, the California Republican Committee persuaded Reagan to remain in the ranks of the Democrats and campaign there in favor of the Republican candidate Richard Nixon. Democrat John F. Kennedy wins the election. In 1962, Ronald Reagan becomes a Republican. He makes his first serious political capital in 1964. Speaks on television in support of the Republican candidate for the presidency Goldwater. The speech drew attention, was remembered and went down in history as the speech Reagan's running mate lost, but the neophyte's speech brought $8 million to the Republican coffers and demonstrated that the party had an ideology and had active, charming, strong carriers of it. It was the ideology of extreme right-wing conservatism. We should not require working men and women to shoulder the additional burden of responsibility for that part of society that can take care of itself but prefers to rely entirely on social welfare, idling away at the expense of more conscientious citizens. So said Ronald Reagan. On the 8th of November 1966, he wins the gubernatorial election in the state of California. He pursues a harsh policy of economic recovery. The number of staff of state institutions is frozen, funds for the maintenance of colleges are cut, social assistance centers for the poor are eliminated, especially special institutions to help blacks. You want equality, get it? A number of free medical institutions are closed. Unpopular measures turn out to be cost-effective. And Reagan is re-elected governor by a margin greater than the first time around. Isn't it time for the White House? Reagan tries to become the Republican Party's candidate for President of the United States in 1968 and in 1976. Unsuccessful. On the 13th of November 1979, he makes another official declaration of entry into the race for the presidency. As a result of the confrontation with Democrat Carter, he received 489 electoral votes against 49. He won the presidency, becoming the oldest as president at the age of 69. Already in his inaugural address he said, "The state will not solve our problems. Government is a problem in itself." Another statement, "Government does not solve problems, it only finances their solution." 2 months after taking office, on the 30th of March 1981, at the entrance to Washington's Hilton Hotel, a mentally unstable fan of actress Jodie Foster, John Hinckley, shoots Reagan. One of the bullets passes close to the president's heart. Bodyguards are killed. An aide to the head of state is seriously wounded. Taken to the hospital, Reagan jokes with the medical staff, "I hope you're all Republicans." Having come to power under the slogan "It's Morning in America," the 40th president unleashed an avalanche of personnel and policy decisions on his countrymen in his first months in the White House. It made an impression. Reagan restored to the institution of the presidency an importance in the eyes of the nation that had been largely lost after the Vietnam War, Nixon's scandalous resignation, and the dim reigns of Ford and Carter. The head of state radiated optimism, confidence and humor. That said, Reagan was not a workaholic. It's true that no one has ever died from hard work, but I think so. Why take the risk? He's been called the 9-to-5 president. Researchers have calculated that of his 8 years as president, he spent a cumulative year on his ranch. He repeatedly emphasized that his method of governance meant surrounding himself with outstanding individuals, brilliant specialists in their field, who should not be interfered with, at least as long as they correctly understood and implemented presidential policies. Hence the journalistic definition of Reagan as a great communicator. In addition to injuries from the assassination attempt, Reagan underwent surgeries for colon, skin and prostate cancer during his presidency. Already after his resignation in 1989, it became known that he was suffering from Alzheimer's disease, a gradual destruction of brain cells accompanied by memory loss. In the last years of his life, Reagan could not remember that he had once been President of the United States. He did not recognize his loved ones. He lost the ability to move, speak and eat independently. In 1994, he addressed a farewell letter to his compatriots. "I am beginning the path that will lead me to the sunset of my life." On the 5th of June 2004, Ronald Wilson Reagan died at his home in Los Angeles. The 9th of all us presidents, he is honored with a state funeral. After ceremonies in Washington, D.C., he is buried in the park of his memorial library in Simi Valley, California.